Hi people, Daniel from Devil & Sons Guitars here, and today on the A to Z of guitars we're on V. V is for volume pots. So today we're going to look at volume pots. We're going to look at what a pot is, what the different sizes are, what the different ratings are, and when you might use them. So let's look at a selection of these pots. These are my audio ones and these are my linear ones. We'll test them out in a little bit, but what we're interested in looking at now is just some differences in the shape and design of them. And the shape and design can change, and it's not necessarily related to if it's an audio or a linear or a 250k or a 50k. So what am I talking about, shapes and designs? Well, look, first of all, I've got a slightly larger pot, and then I might have a mini pot, and you can see they look more or less identical apart from their size. And really that's all there is to it. The size is different, and the reason you might want a different size is because of the space you've got within your guitar and the cavities in your guitar. I mean, you might say the larger ones could be more robust, but I think it just depends on the make that you buy. And the next element to look at is the length of the shafts. So as you can see here, let me unscrew the... Most times you'll find when a pot is attached to a guitar, it's going to have a washer and a nut above and potentially a washer below, or sometimes a crinkled washer that helps it engage more. But what we see with the length of the shafts here is there's two different ones. One of them is definitely longer than the other. And the reason you might want a longer shaft is because of the thickness of the guitar between the surface of the guitar and the cavity. So on mine, when I sculpt on top of my surfaces of the guitar by adding bits of wood and things, quite often I find I need a longer shaft. Another thing you'll notice is the writing on them. B for linear, A for audio, 500, 250k. You'll also notice the split shaft, which is where you put the knob or the cap on your pot when it goes through the guitar body. The split end helps it squeeze a bit and hold tight to the knob. And now I'm going to take one apart. So here we've got the pot with the shaft taken out, which allows me to remove the top of it. And you'll see there's a bit of plastic underneath. Let's tip that out. And the bit of plastic has metal on it with two prongs. Don't know if you can see those two prongs. So basically, as you turn this, the position of those two prongs changes. And those two prongs stick up slightly because they make contact with the two strips on the base of the top, on the underside of the top of the pot. Now, this brown stuff is non-conductive, but the black stuff is conductive. And you'll see that the outer rim goes from the two end pins, connects the two end pins together. And the inner one is just over a semicircle there. And those metal points, when they touch it and they turn around, those metal pins make contact with those two tracks, the inner and the outer ones, connecting them together. So essentially, they're making the length of the connection shorter and longer as they turn around, therefore increasing or decreasing the resistance as the signal goes round the path. So let me just quickly explain this setup. I've got a linear 500 and a linear 250k pot. I've got an audio 250 pot and an audio 500 pot in this. Now this is a temporary device I've made to hold the pots in, and it links through the wire into the guitar. So I've just basically taken the volume out, extended the wires, and now I've got this that I can test the volumes on. And on it, there's a display, and the display reads 0 to 100, so I can absolutely line up the chicken knob that I've got on top to adjust it to different readings. And what I'm going to do for each different pot is take a reading at 0, at 20, at 40, 60, 80 and 100. And I've got my volume meter lined up here. Now I've rewired this volume meter, so instead of having on it a microphone at the end, it's got a wire. And that wire links into the same space the mic did, but it's got on the end of it a jack lead. So what I've got is the guitar jack lead going out into my amp, and then the amp as an output as well, which is going into the volume meter. So if I play this, for example, and turn the volume up, you'll see the volume increases and the number will increase from there when I play. Now this has a facility to have a hold function, which means I'll set the hold on and it will read the maximum value that the volume gets to at each of the settings, 0, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. And I'll do that for each of the volume pots, and I won't change anything else. The volume on the amp will stay the same going into here. The tone and the pickup controls will stay exactly the same. Nothing would change apart from this. So it'll be as scientific as I can, but of course I'm actually strumming the string myself, and maybe there's a variation on how hard I'm going to strum it, but let's see what I can do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to film each pot, but then combine them on a screen. So you've got all 4 at each of the settings. So all 4 at 0, all 4 at 20, all 4 at 40, etc, etc. You know that when I've got Kurt here, I'm looking at the Audio 500. When we're on Slash, that's the Audio 250. Lemmy is the Linear 500. And Wayne is for the Linear 250. There's a natural amount of electromagnetism that's going through the cable, so at 0 we're still going to have a reading, and as we go up, even when I'm not playing, you will hear some fuzz and hum that the pickups are picking up. So the non-playing reading at a higher level is going to look higher because of that hum. Ignoring all the figures for the moment, let's just hear what the Audio 500 actually sounds like. So it gradually gets louder, but it feels like there's a massive increase in the last quarter here. So there's not much sound in the first quarter. So now let's just hear what the Audio 250K sounds like without worrying about the numbers and stuff yet. I'll just play my E. You can hear a nice steady rise there. Really good. So yeah, it feels like it's a bit exponential towards the end. But a bit like we can hear more in the lower quarter than the 500K. This is the Linear 500. Let's just see what it sounds like. Oh, maybe starts quite quiet and then gets suddenly louder. Let's see again. I wonder if there's a massive drop just in the when I was turning it down at the last 10 here. Oh yeah, well let's see when we test it and what happens. The Linear 250 now. Again, it feels like a little drop between 0 and 10, but I thought that was quite even all the way. This guitar, by the way, is one I made for Ginger of the Wild Hearts. It's their old logo. He actually had a guitar like this that was stolen off of a film shoot for a song, and I remade it for the 20th anniversary of the release of the album that song was on. And in fact, I made it just as something he could hang on his wall as a sort of thank you, because I really like their music. But because he liked it so much, he wanted to have a version he could play. So I kept this one and I remade him one with the exact specs that he wanted in his guitar. So, you know, maybe I should have asked him first. But if you want to see more of that, on my Facebook page, I've got an album with the making of it in. I'll leave a link for that below. And very aptly, this guitar's just been featured by Planet Rock in their weirdest guitars of rock history. So I'll put a link to that also in the comments below. Set at 0. Set at 20. Set at 40. Set at 60. Set at 80. Set at 100. Now let's look at the results that I put into a chart. And what you can see is not quite what I expected. All of them have that very sudden rise. I kind of thought it would be more even, but they all have that sudden rise between 0 and 20 where the volume's going up much more exponentially than the rest. But what I then would have expected from the linear ones is just like the linear 250, the grey line, quite a straight change between each stage. The linear 500, now that's got a weird dip in it. If that dip wasn't there, it would have been more normal. Possibly that's come from me not playing the string hard enough or different to how I'd played the others. And also, if I was going to be really scientific, I would have done an average and done this a few times. But what we see with the audio ones is they kind of dip before they raise to the end. And now the reason for that is audio tapered pots are actually what we call logarithmic pots as opposed to the linear ones. So they respond exponentially. The figures on this are just made up to give you the shape of the graph. But what I would say is I chose to do volume because resistance is theoretical in many ways. We are guitarists, we're used to hearing sounds. I wanted to record sounds because that's what we're talking about. But when you look at the basic chart for what you'd expect from resistance as you turn the oil pot, you'd see the linear makes an exact straight line. Whereas the audio, the bottom line, kind of slowly rises and then gets much quicker. You can also get a reverse audio, which does exactly the opposite. It raises really quick and then kind of slows down. Now, the human ear interprets that a bit different. So with the straight line of the linear one, actually you don't really hear a natural straight rise when you're doing it. If you imagine your TV, when you turn your TV volume up, that's a straight linear rise. But what seems to happen is it slowly gets louder and then it gets really loud very quickly. Well, why would you have a difference in what you put on your guitar? Well, it's a matter of taste. I definitely prefer just that rise that I heard in the linear 250, and I think going forward that's what I'm going to use. With the audio ones you might want a volume swell where you want it to suddenly get louder, or maybe you want to be able to just hit your volume and just have a quick raise at the end, in which case an audio one would be great for you. It is a matter of taste though. Well, thanks for watching. Don't forget that V you saw at the beginning is from the first letter of a well-known guitar-related brand. And at the end of this series of videos, I'm going to put one up which does the whole breakdown, A to Z, or Z if you're in America, of the different brands and the different logos they came from. Keep track, see how many you get right, and tune in for that. Until next time, I should say, if you found this interesting, you might want to look at my maintenance video, which I've got a link to here. The maintenance video looks at how you can look after your guitar with daily care, and one of the things we focus on is those volume pots. Until next time, happy strumming.